In this video, you are going to learn how to install Angular CLI. I'm going to use a specific version of Angular CLI. If you have already installed Angular CLI, I want you to remove that. First of all, you need to run this command sudo npm install -g. Actually, I need to uninstall the previous version. If you have installed Angular CLI, I want you to remove that. Add Angular/CLI. It will ask me the password. And the second step, you need to remove the npm cache. If you're using Mac, you need to use the sudo keyword. It will take some time to remove the cache. You can also use yarn to remove the cache. I'm going to use this yarn to remove the cache. I have already installed the yarn on my machine. Let me run the sudo. Cool. It has cleared the cache. Now I need to install the specific version of Angular. I am going to use 1.7.4. Make sure you must have installed this version. I have created the whole course by using this version 1.7.4. It's a CLI version. It provides me Angular 5 version. I'll show you how to upgrade the Angular 5 project to Angular 6 in the later videos. I'm going to use the sudo keyword. Now it is going to install this specific version 1.7.4. Angular CLI has installed. Now I'm going to create a new project. First of all, let me show you my Angular CLI version. I can run this command ng-v. Now you can see that here we have Angular CLI 1.7.4 and I'm using the Node 8.9.4 version. Now it's time to generate a new project. I'm going to use ng-new, the name of the project. You can choose any name. I'm going to use material production. I also want to use another flag style. I'm going to use SAS here, SCSS. You need to provide this flag. A project has created. Now it is going to install all the npm dependencies. My Angular project has created. Let me navigate to my project, material production. Now we need to run the project by using ng-serve. Project is running at localhost 4200. Let me go to this URL. Here we have welcome to the Angular app. I'm going to use VS Code editor. You can choose any editor or IDE. Now we need to install Angular material. I'm going to use yarn. If you don't have yarn, you can install yarn by running this command npm install -g yarn. I'm going to add a couple of dependencies. We need Angular material and we also need Angular CDK. Also need Angular animations. Dependency is hammer.js. Dependencies have installed successfully. Now open the app.module.ts file. Now we need to import browser animation module from the Angular platform browser animations. And we need browser animation module. I'm going to import it here, browser animation module. Cool. Let's try to import a couple of material components module. I need material button module. And let's try to import it first here. Import from Angular material. We need material button module. Cool. We have imported that. Now I can use all the directives or components from this module. Open the app.component.html file, get rid of all this stuff. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new material button. Click me, let's say, click me. And I'm going to add a directive material, Angular material package provider directive. material button. Let's try to test it. I'm gonna run the application by using ngserve. Let me refresh that. Cool. Here we have click me. If you try to inspect this button, and let me show you the console, and now you will see the warning message, could not find Angular material core theme. So we need to enable the theme. Open the styles.scss file. Here I'm going to import the theme. Basically, Angular material provides the default theme. You can find the theme here from the Angular material package. Here we have material. Let me show you the default theme. Here we have pre-built themes. Now you can use any of the CSS. I am going to use indigo pink.css file. Incredible. Now you will not get any warning. Now button looks good now. I also want to use material icon in this project, so we need to add material font here. I'm gonna add a material font, https fonts.googleapis.com/icon. Family is equals to material plus icons. And one last thing, we need to use hammer.js. Angular material components use hammer.js for gestures. So I'm gonna import the hammer.js. Cool. Let me show you this some demo of material icon. Open the component.html file. Let's try to use the material font here, material icon. To use material icon, we need to import that. Material icon module. Remember that? This is a magic of VS Code. It will automatically import the module for me. Now I can use the directory from material icon module. Let me show you mat icon. Material icon module provides this directive mat icon and the name of the icon. Let's try face here. Incredible. Here we have a button here. I don't want to import Angular material related module in the app.module.ts file. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new shared folder. I will place all the shareable module inside the shared directory. Get rid of this stuff. I'm going to use Angular CLI to generate a new module. ng generate module. And we need to generate module inside the shared directory, and the name of the module is material. I'm going to use flat tag here. Cool. A module has created successfully. If you will find the shared folder, if we have shared folder, and here we have material.module.ts file. What I need to do, I need to copy these stuff and import into the material.module.ts file and copy these guys. Cool. Get rid of these stuff here. Open the material module. Import all the material related components here, material module, and we have material button and material icon. And we also need to export these modules to use into the other modules, material button module and material icon module. So what I need to do here, I need to import this shared module into the app module. So I'm going to import the shared module. Now everything will be available to me. Basically the name of the shared module is material module. Cool. Here we have material modules. So all the components will be available. I'm going to refresh that. My app is running here, but it is giving us the warning message, mat icon is not a non-element. Let me run the application again. Incredible. Everything looks good so far. Let me create the Invoice Builder module. I'm going to use Angular CLI. Hey Angular, please generate the Invoice Builder module for me. I also would like to generate the routing. And let me dry run the first. Incredible. It is going to create these two files. So I'm going to execute the exact command. Incredible. Now you will see the Invoice Builder. Here we have Invoice Builder routing module and Invoice Builder module. So we also need another component, ng generate component. I would like to create a component inside the Invoice Builder folder, and the name of the component is Invoice Builder. And I don't want spec file. You can choose this flag. I also want inline style and I also want inline template. Let me dry run the first. Oops, we need to use here dry run. Cool. What it will do, it will create this component inside the Invoice Builder folder, but it will create another folder. I don't want to do this way. Let's say I would like to use another flag flat. Don't create new folder, just create the component. Cool. Invoice Builder, and it will create the component inside the Invoice Builder folder, and it will update the Invoice Builder module. Let's execute this command. Remove the dry run. Cool. Let me open that. Boom. Here we have Invoice Builder component. I would like to implement the lazy loading. To implement lazy loading, first we must have an app routing module. I don't have app routing module. What I'm going to do, I'm going to copy the same stuff from the Invoice Builder module. Invoice Builder routing module. Let me copy that. I'm going to create a new file inside the app. And the name of the file is app-routing.module.ts. Cool. I'm going to paste it here. App routing module must render the root routes. Let's define some of the routes in Invoice Builder routing module. And each route should be object. We must need to specify the path. I'm going to choose empty, and let me choose the component should be Invoice Builder component. This is our main component inside this folder. So we need to implement the lazy loading here. Open the app routing module, and here we need to specify the path. Path should be Invoice Builder, and we also need to specify the load children. This is used to load the modules in the lazy loaded way. I'll show you what is lazy loading. And the format should be, you need to choose in app, go to the app folder, Invoice Builder, find this folder, and inside this folder you will find this module, Invoice Builder.module, and hash the name of the module, Invoice Builder module. That's it. Let's try to test it. I'm gonna run the application by using ng-serve, and you can also say that default route is redirects to Invoice Builder. I'm gonna run the application again. Incredible. Application is running. Let's try to go to this URL. Let me refresh that. I'm gonna go to this URL, Invoice Builder. Let me show the console. Open the console. Oops, nothing happens because we did not specify the router outlet. Open the app.component.html file. Get rid of this stuff. Here I need to use the router outlet directive. If any path match, Angular will render the component inside this router outlet. I got the error here. Router outlet is not a known element. Cool. Angular is right because we did not import the routing module here. So first we need to import the app routing module. I can't import in this way. Let's import manually. Import the app routing module. Oops, I think I did not change the name of the app routing module. Let's try to do that. App routing module. Oops, I did something wrong here. App routing module. Cool. Now I can import that app routing module. Cool. So I also need to import it here. App routing module. Let's try to test it. I got the error. No, everything looks good so far. Undefined imported by the module app module. Let's try to run the application again. I'm gonna stop the server and run it again. Okay, I got this error. No ng module metadata found for Invoice Builder. Okay, Angular is right. You must need to add the module keyword here. Let's try to test it again. I'm gonna restart the server again by using ngs. Let me refresh the browser. Cool, everything looks good so far. We have successfully added the lazy loading. Let's prove the lazy loading. Is lazy loading working or not? I'm gonna create a new variable. Let's say our path should be root path and component should be app component, which is our root component. Let me add anything here. Let's say h1 is equals to app main component. I've refreshed the browser. Let me go to the localhost colon 4200. Let me open the network tab. I'm gonna refresh that again. Cool. Now you will not see any file related to Invoice Builder module. So this is the lazy loading. If I go to this URL, Angular will load all the components related file for the Invoice Builder module. Let's hit this URL. Boom. Now you will see the chunk file here. Invoice Builder module chunk file. It has loaded the Invoice Builder modules. So lazy loading means import all the assets when we need it. Our goal is to build this layout. Here we have Invoice Builder, we have Toolbar here, and here we have side nav. It will display the dashboard. Here we will display all the items. Let's start creating the main component. Get rid of the stuff. And I need first the main component. Main component will render the content and the generate component. I want to create a component inside the Invoice Builder components folders, and I want main component, main content component. Let's do some, I don't want no spec file, I don't want spec file. Let's do some dry run first. Cool, it will generate the components. Cool, it will generate the main content component inside the components folder. Let's try to execute the script here. Remove the dry run. Bam, it has created this main content component inside the components folder. Here we have main content component. Let's add the routing. Open the Invoice Builder routing module, and I need to load the children here. I need to display all the children, and the path should be empty path and component should be main content component. Let's try to run the application. I'm gonna refresh the browser. Cool. Invoice Builder works the same way. Let me check the console. Did I get any error? No, I did not get any error, so everything looks good so far. Let's start building the site nav components. So let me show you the output, what we are going to build. Here we have site nav bar, and here we have toolbar, and this is also another toolbar. Here we have main content. Let's start building the site nav component. I'm going to create a new component, ng generate component. We need site nav, and I don't want a spec file. And actually I want to create the site nav component inside my Invoice Builder module, and I want to create this component inside the components directory. And site nav, let's try to dry run first. Dash dry run. If everything good now? Okay, cool. It will create the component inside this folder. Let's create that. Remove the dry run. Cool. A site nav component is created successfully. We also need a toolbar component. Let's create the toolbar. Cool. So we have created two components. We have site nav and the toolbar. Let me open my main component here, Invoice Builder component. Open the Invoice Builder routing. Here I want to render the child routes, which is main component. So if you go to here, let's say Invoice Builder dot clients, Invoice Builder dot invoices, whatever you want to do, it will render the child component. So we need to specify the router outlet. Where do you want to render the child components? So I'm gonna open the Invoice Builder component, and here we need to specify the app side nav. Let me double check the name by using the side nav component. The name is app side nav. Everything looks good so far. Open the app side nav component.html file. First we need to use toolbar, app toolbar component. And here I would like to render any child route. In our case, the child route should be main content component, so it will render the main content component. Let's try to run this. ng-serve. So everything good now. Let me refresh the browser. Cool. Here we have toolbar. It has rendered the toolbar, and here we have main content component. Let me refresh that. If you inspect the element, and I would like to go to the augury here. I want to show you all the components. Cool. And first one is app router outlet. Okay, cool. Router outlet it has rendered the Invoice Builder component. And here we have Invoice Builder. Inside the Invoice Builder, we created the site nav component. Inside the site nav, we have toolbar component. Here we are rendering the child elements. Child component is going to render here. And here we have main content component. Let's start building this site nav. If you go to the material.angular/components, and I'm going to select the navigation, and you will find this site nav. We are going to implement this site nav. So to use this site nav, let me show you the API. First, you need to import this module, material site nav module. Then all the directives will be available for us, like site nav content or site nav container, stuff like that. Let's start implementing that. First step, you need to import this module, material site nav module. I also need to export it, material site nav module. Let's start implementing the site nav component. First of all, I'm going to provide a couple of the CSS here. You need to open the assets of site nav component.cs and paste all the CSS. Let me do that. Open the site nav component.scs file. I'm going to paste all the CSS stuff here. Let's start building the site nav container first. This directive, we can access this directive because we have imported the material site nav module. I'm going to write the class here. Class is app site nav. Let me show you app site nav container. I'm going to copy the same class and paste it here. That's it. Now we need material site nav, and I'm also going to add the class app site nav. Let me double check my class. Here we have app site nav call. I'm also going to use a variable. Let's create a temporary variable site nav. Let's say create here, or content, you can render anything here. Let's say create whole. So we must need to have content here, site nav content. Create a new div. The class should be app site nav content. Create a button to open the site nav. Material button. I'm gonna apply directive from the material button module. Let's change it to type of this button is button. You can also add click handler. So I'm gonna access the open method from the site nav dot open call. Here you can write the name of the button. I'm gonna choose open site nav. Let's try to test it. Cool. So we have button. Cool. We have opened the site nav. It is going to render the create here. Cool. Let's try to copy these stuff. We want to render the app.routlet and toolbar here in this site nav content. This toolbar will be placed here. Let me refresh that. Now we're going to build this toolbar with dashboard. If you go to the components with Angular material documentation, let me show you the navigation and you will find this toolbar. I'm going to display this toolbar. To use this toolbar, we must need to import this material toolbar module. So open the material module. Here I am going to import material toolbar module. I also need to export it. And here I would like to use the material toolbar. Remove this grid here. I would like to use material toolbar, a directive or component. Here I am going to provide the dashboard. You can choose color here. There are many colors material toolbar provides. The first one is primary, and let's try to test this. Oops, here we have primary color. I would like to change to accent. I'm using this color, accent, but it depends on you what color you like. You can choose any color. Here I'm using the material list item. Material module provides the list item module. So let's use that. We have only dashboard here. I would like to render all the list items. First we need to import this list item module, material list module. I'm gonna copy that. I also need to export it. Now I can use all the directives. Open the site nav component.html. Here I would like to use material list, and if we have material list item, and you can provide the name of the item. Let's say item 1, item 2, and item 3. Let's refresh that, open that. Boom, Here we have item 1, item 2, and item 3. Now we are going to build this toolbar, and I'm going to add the text here in Invoice Builder. Let's start it. Open the toolbar component.html file. We have already imported the material toolbar. Let's add the color property. I'm going to choose accent, and here you can provide the name. Here I'm going to write the span, and the name should be, let's say, Invoice Builder, the name of our application. Cool. Did you see that? We have successfully added the toolbar here at the top. You can also add more properties on the material side nav if you go to the docs and check the API section. And here we have mode. Side nav provides 3 mode: over, push, and side. We will play around these mode, and here we have boolean, which is input open property. I also use this property. Let's play around it. First of all, I'm going to use the open property, and I'm going to set the value of true. By default, it will be opened. Cool. Did you see that? My site nav has already opened. I don't need to open it again. If you refresh the browser, and you will see the by default, it has already set to opened. There is another mode here. You can use many mode. The first mode is side. It will always still on the side. Here we have, this is a mode here. Now you can see that my side nav has set to the side mode. Let's add another mode. It also provides the push here. Let's try to do this one. Push, cool, push, cool. Let's try to do another third mode. Which one is? Let me check the third mode. The value of third mode is over. Let's try to access the over. Oops, here we have over mode, but I am interested in side mode. We're going to use the side mode. Oops, but I want to add some shadow here. How can you do that? We have a class here. You can provide the matte elevation Z1, let's say. It has added a little bit shadow, but I would like to use the 10 here. Incredible. Now everything looks good so far. We did not add responsiveness in our application. If you inspect that, if we close that, this sidebar will be closed. So I would like to implement that. Let me show you what do I need to implement. If I change the resize the window, did you see that? It has closed the side nav bar. If you go to the mobile phone, you will see the side nav has closed. So that is we have to implement. I'm going to use a media query. So you can use this match media method. It is available in the TypeScript in our Angular project because it is a global variable. Window is a global variable, and here we have match media method. I can use that. It will return the media query list object, and that object will represent the media query string. I can access the result of media query by using this method. Here you can see that we will add the breakpoint on 720 pixel. Let's implement that. First, we need to open the side nav component.html. You can also use property binding. Opened. This time we need to use the method here is screen small. I did not create this method yet in the side nav component.ts file. I'm going to use the toggle here. If opened, then closed. If closed, then opened. I can also use property binding for the mode. Let's say if screen is small, then we need to close the sidebar. I can use the mode here. If screen is small, then I would like to use the over mode. If screen is big, then we need to use side mode. That's it. I also need to change here toggle side nav. toggle, TOGGLE. It's not working. My code has broken because we don't have a screen small method. Let's implement that. Open the site nav component. Is screen small. Cool. So we're gonna use a media query. I'm gonna create a new variable, media matcher, and it will return the media query list, and I'm going to use the match media method. I have talked about this match media method. So it will take the query string. We need to specify our breakpoint. I'm going to specify the breakpoint here, max width breakpoint. You can choose 720, maximum 720. Here we need to provide our match media. I'm going to use template string. I'm going to provide the max width to, let me replace my variable, max width breakpoint, and pixel here, pixel. Here what I want to do, it will return this dot, if matches, it will return the boolean value. Let's try to test it. Oops, it's not working yet. Let's try to inspect that. Oops, it did not work yet. Now you can see that my screen is small now, but it is not closing this side navigation bar. Angular has problem with change detection, so we need to use another strategy. I'm going to use ngZone. ngZone allows you to run asynchronous code. So ngZone, cool. It has imported this class. Now I can use a listener, media matcher dot add listener. Media matcher also provides a listener method. We'll take callback method. Here I'm going to use this dot or zone dot run. We need to provide the callback method. It will return this dot. It will return the result MQL. This dot media matcher is equals to MQL. Let's try to test it. It's working now. Let me check that. Inspect the element. I'm gonna change the width to 720 is a maximum breakpoint. Now it has closed our sidebar. That is a magic here. You can see that. Boom. You can also check on the mobile. Incredible. It has closed this side navigation bar. Let's do a little bit debugging. Open the sources folder. Go to this sources tab and find the side nav component.ts file. I have already opened this side nav component.ts file. I'm going to put breakpoint here. Let's try to resize the window. Bam, it has stopped at this breakpoint. Now you can see that the value is false. Cool. I'm going to refresh that. I'm going to resume the application. Now you can see that it is going to show the side navigation to us. I'm going to resume the application, do it again. Now everything looks good so far. Let's make it small. Cool. I'm going to resume the application. Cool. Now the matches should be true. You can see that the value is true. The value true means now is screen small will be true. The value should be true. it will close the side navigation bar. You can see that it has successfully closed this side navigation. Right now, we did not implement this menu icon. Let's start building this menu icon at Toolbar. Open the toolbar.component.html file. Here, let's create the menu button. Button is, and I'm gonna make it to material button. Use material icon, mat icon, and I would like to use the menu. Incredible. Here we have menu icon is created successfully, but it is not working. When I click on this menu icon, it will toggle the side navigation bar. So open the side nav component.html, get rid of this button. I don't need this button. Now I would like to pass the event handler. I'm going to create event binding in Angular. Let's name it toggle side nav. And I'm going to provide this function side nav.toggle. I would like to emit this function inside the toolbar. How can I do it? Open the toolbar.ts file. I would like to create the event emitter output property. And the name should be toggle side nav. And it is a new event emitter. Now I would like to emit this toggle side nav event. When I click on this button, I would like to emit this event. I'm going to use click handler. The name of the event is toggle side nav dot emit. Let's try to test it. Is it working? Aha, it's working now. Cool. Let's try to debug this code. I'm going to inspect the element. Open the augury. Find the toolbar. Here we have toolbar. If I will emit this event, it will close. Boom. Here we are emitting this event from the toolbar. I don't want to display menu icon each time. I just want to display menu icon on small screen. So I'm going to add a media query. I have already provided the CSS for you. You need to open the CSS and paste them to toolbar component.css. Let me paste all the CSS. Cool. So I need to apply this class. Let's apply this class to the button. Class should be toggle side nav. Let me confirm that. Side nav toggle. I'm gonna copy that. Toggle side nav. Cool. Side nav toggle. Now it looks good so far. Incredible. It has the menu icon has gone. Let me convert into the small screen. You will see the menu icon. Cool. Let me check on the Windows. Let me check on the phone mode. Cool. Here you will see the menu icon. Let's add a little bit padding or margin here. Open the styles.scss. I'm gonna add the margin here, body. Cool. Now everything looks good so far. And one last part, we need to style this main content. Here you will see that here we have styling. I have added this styling for main content. Basically, I'm using the card component from the Angular material. If you will go to the layout section in the docs, you will find the card component. To use the card component, first we need to import this material card module. Go to the material module.ts and I am going to import the material card module. Now I can use that. to use, we need to import that material card module. Now I can use this component. Open the main content.html. Here let's say material card. I'm going to add my main content. Let's try to test it. Boom, it's working now. Let's add a little bit margin here. Open the site nav component.html. I would like to apply the styling on each router outlet child component. So let's wrap inside the div. I'm going to apply the wrapper class. Let's create this class into the site nav component.ts. I have already created this class, so you will see this wrapper class here in the site nav component.html. Now it looks good. So congratulations, we have made the Invoice Builder layout. In this module, we are going to build some routing for our Invoice Builder application. Let me open the side menu. You will see the invoices. You will see the invoice listing here. And if you go to the clients, and you will see the client listing here. I'll also do a little bit refactoring in this module. We will replace from Invoice Builder module to dashboard. Let's do some refactoring. Replace the Invoice Builder to dashboard. Dashboard. I also need to change the name here. Invoice Builder routing to dashboard routing module. Let's do that. Dashboard routing module. Let me change the name here. Dashboard routing whole. And I also need to change the component name. I'm gonna rename this component to dashboard.component. I also need to rename the module name. Let me rename that dashboard module. Let's rename the module here, dashboard module whole. And it is giving us some warning messages. Let me do that. Dashboard routing, and we need to change the name of the component Invoice Builder to dashboard component. You can also change the selector name app dashboard. Let's fix all the errors. Remove this one. Replace the Invoice Builder component to dashboard component. It will automatically import the dashboard component for me. Cool. Let's fix all the errors. Dashboard, I don't have any error. I have a couple of errors in the dashboard module. Remove all the stuff. And we need dashboard routing module. Dashboard routing module. And here we need dashboard component. Cool. Everything looks good. Now I don't have any error right now. Let's try to test it. I'm gonna run the application by using ngs. Oops, I got some of the errors. App routing module. Open the app routing module. And we need to change the path here, dashboard. And one last thing, I also need to replace Invoice Builder to dashboard. Dashboard. And finally, the last change here, we need to use dashboard module. Let's refactor. Everything is good now. Dashboard routing module. We have dashboard component. We have dashboard module. Now let's try it again. I'm gonna stop the server and run it again. Incredible, application is running. Let's go to the localhost colon 4200. Boom. Here we have Invoice Builder. Here we have dashboard. The route is successfully updated. Now we are going to implement this sidebar. I'm going to add the invoice list item and clients list item. So if you go to the Angular material documentation, find the list section from the layout. You will find the list section. Let me scroll down. They have provided this template. If you want to convert the list item to nav, you have to use this code. I'm going to copy the same code and open the side nav component.html file. Yeah, I'm going to replace all the stuff here. I don't need href. I will use router link. Router link is a directive, so we need to provide the array of routes here. Here I'm going to use link.url. You have to provide the array, and we need to create the links array. Here I can show link.name. Cool. So let's start creating this links array inside the side nav component.ts file. Here I am going to create the links array. The first property, the first route is the name of the first route is invoices, and URL should be invoices. And the name of the second URL should be clients, and the URL is clients. Cool. Let's try to test it. Incredible. We have added the invoices and the client's nav item. Now we need to implement the routing. If you go to the invoices, you will see the invoice listing component. So how can I do it? We will create separate module for invoices, and I will also create a separate module for clients. These two modules will be feature modules. So go ahead and generate a new module. ng generate module. The first module is invoices. Let me do some dry run here. It will generate this module, so everything looks good. So let's try to execute that. Invoices. Now we need invoice listing component inside this invoices module. I'm going to generate a new component inside the invoices and invoice listing. I don't need any spec here. Let's try to do some dry run. Cool. It will update this module and it will create the invoice listing component inside the invoices. Or you can also do in this way, like I want to follow the same coding conventions, components. Cool. Now it will create the invoice listing components inside the components directory. Let's do that. Cool. Let me open the invoice. Here we have invoices module, and we will have these components. The first component is invoice listing. Let's add the routing into the dashboard routing.ts file, dashboard routing module. Here I'm going to add a new route. Path is, let's say, invoices, and component should be invoice listing component. Let's try to test it. Will it work or not? ng serve. I'm gonna refresh the browser. Oops, I caught the error. Let me show you the error. I'm going to check the console. Oops, invoice listing component is not a part of ng module. Cool. Angular is right because we have created this component inside the invoice module. So how can you use this component here? What I'm going to do, I'm going to open the invoices module. I also want to use material module here. I also want to use forms module. Let's import the first. If you want to use the invoice listing component in the dashboard module, we need to export this component, invoice listing component. Now to use this component, we must need to import this module. Open the dashboard module.ts. I want to import. Let me import that. I would like to import invoices module because I want to use the invoice listing component. Now you can use the invoice listing component. Incredible. Cool. Aha. Invoice listing works. So let's add the material card here. Open the invoice listing component.html. Material card, and inside material card I'm gonna add h1 invoice listing here. Cool. Oops, what's wrong? Let's inspect that. Check the console. Mat card is not a known element. Let me check the main content.html. Yes, we have a material card. Open the invoice listing material card. Did I import this material module? Invoices module. Yes, I have imported the material module. Let's try to test it. Aha, here we have invoice listing. Cool, it's working now. Invoice listing. Now we need to implement the same stuff for the clients. So go ahead and create a new module. I'm going to create a new clients module. Now we need client listing component. I'm going to generate a new component inside the clients components folder. And I want to create the client listing. I don't want no spec file. Let me do some dry run. Okay, it will create this component inside the client components directory, and it will also update this module. We have created this component, client listing component. I'm going to do the same stuff. First, we need to add the route in the dashboard routing module. And I'm going to copy the same stuff here. Let's say clients. This time we need to say clients, and we need client listing component. So we cannot use the client listing component here because we did not import this module. Go to the clients module, and we need forms module here. Forms module and material module. Cool. And one last thing, we also need to export this component, client listing. Oops. Client listing component. Now I can use that. So one last thing, we also need to import this module into the dashboard module. I'm going to import that. Here I'm going to say client module. Let's try to test it. I'm going to run the application by using ngs. Cool. Let's try to refresh the browser. I'm going to check the client listing. Client listing works. Okay. So one last thing, we need to add the material card. Open the client listing component.html file. I'm going to add a card, material card. Yeah, let's say H1 client listing. Boom, it's working now. First of all, you need to open the project in your terminal, and I don't have anything in this directory. I'm going to create a new package.json file by using npm init, and I'm going to use another flag --yes. Please don't ask me any question, just create the package.json file. I'm going to open the project in my editor. You can use any editor. I will use VS Code. So first we need to install Express npm i -s. -s means please save this Express as a dependency. We're going to use Express framework. Let's install the Express first. Express package has installed successfully. Now we need to create the source folder. Inside the source folder, I'm going to create a new app.js file. Let's create the Express server. First we need to import the Express server. You basically use require method to import the external module. We need Express package, and I'm going to create a new application from the Express class. I need to call this method. It will return the application object. And now you can also specify the port here. Let me specify the port. I'm going to use 3000, and you can use app.listen method. We need to specify the port. Let me log the message. It will take the callback method. I'm going to use backtick here. Let me log the message. Server is running at port 3000. Let's run the application by using node. Go to the source folder and find the app.js. Cool. Server is running at port 3000. If you go to the localhost :3000, you will get this error, cannot get. Because we did not create any route here, so I am going to create a new route. I'm going to create the root route. It will take callback method with request and response. And I would like to send this simple message here. Let me send the message. Welcome to Invoice Builder backend. I need to start the server again. Let me refresh the browser. Boom, here we have welcome to Invoice Builder. I want to use ES6 feature in our project. Let's say if you try to import the project with ES6 import statement from Express. Let me try to run the project by using node source app.js. Oops, app.js. I will get this error. Import statement. Because node is not working with import statement, so we need to use external package. We're gonna use Babel to transpile our ES6 code to ES5. So we need to install these dependencies. First we need to install a couple of dependencies. I'm gonna use -d for the dev dependencies. Babel CLI, Babel presets, env, Babel CLI and Babel presets env. And I also need Nodejs. We will reload the application by saving the application. Nodejs will do this for us. All these dependencies have installed successfully. Now we need to create a new file in the root directory .babelrc file. Here we need to define our presets. We have only env presets. We need to define our presets. Now we need to open the package.json file. Here I'm going to write the script to start the server. We need to create a new script, start. And first we need to use Nodejs. Go to we have main entry file, which is app.js in the source directory. and I'm going to dash execute by using Babel node. Babel will transpile our ES6 code to ES5. To define our presets, we have installed env presets. Let's try to test it. I'm going to run the application by using npm start. Incredible. Application is running at port 3000. Now you go to the localhost 3000. Boom. Now I can use all the ES6 feature. If you want to deploy your code in production level, first you need to execute this build script. It will create the source map and store all the output file in the disk directory. And then you need to serve your application by using node. Go to the disk folder and it will find the app.js, which is our root entry file. Let's try to test it. I'm going to stop the server. And let's say we are going to deploy the application. First, you need to run this npm build. Cool. It has created the dist folder with app.js file. Here it has transpiled our ES6 code to ES5. Now you can see that it has replaced with var here. It has replaced with require method. This is the ES5. And it has also created the map file. This file will be helpful for debugging. I'll show you how to debug the application with VS Code. Now you can run the application by executing this script npm run serve. Cool. Application is running at port 3000. If you go to the localhost :3000, you will see this message. Welcome to Invoice Builder backend. I'm also going to use Prettier in this course. Prettier is a code formatting tool. If you find the extension, you need to search the Prettier. I'm going to search the Prettier. Prettier is a code formatter plugin. So I need to install that. Actually, I have already installed this plugin. You have to install this plugin. And one more thing, open the Command Shift P, or if you are on Windows, you can open that Control Shift P. Open user settings, and you need to use this setting. Editor.format on safe should be false, and we need to enable the Prettier formatting. Open the user settings. Let me show you what you need to do. Make sure you set this property. Editor.format on safe should be false. I'm also going to use a single quote, so you must need to enable this property. And you must have enabled this property. I'm going to use Prettier for JavaScript and TypeScript. So you need to enable this property. Editor.format on safe should be true. Let me show you the magic of Prettier. If you open the app.js file, I'm going to reformat the code. Let me do that. I'm going to add the return statement. And let me use the little bit formatting. So if I will save the application, a Prettier will reformat my code. You can see that it has reformatted my code. So that is the magic of Prettier. I'm also going to use ESLint in this project. ESLint is a linting package. It will check the code quality of our project. It will tell you when you should use const, when you should use let, when you should var, stuff like that. And they have defined a couple of standards or rules. You will find all the rules in the ESLint. Let me show you all the rules. And here are all the rules. When you should use await in the loop, when you should no console. It will give us all the warning message. Let's install the ESLint first. I'm using global ESLint, so we need to install this package first. Open the terminal, focus terminal, and you need to install this ESLint globally. And if you are using Mac, you need to add the sudo keyword. It will install the ESLint, and then after successfully installed ESLint, I have already installed ESLint. Let me show you my version. I'm currently using 4.19.1 version. To use ESLint, first you need to create this ESLint RC file. It will generate the file for us, ESLint init. Here it is going to ask a couple of questions. What style guide do you want to use? I want to use Airbnb style guide. You need to use this a popular style guide. Cool. I would like to use Airbnb. I don't want to use React here. Press no. Yes, I would like to use JavaScript. It will install ESLint Airbnb plugin. So ESLint has configured successfully. Now you can see that it is giving us the warning message. I have already enabled ESLint. Now I got the warning message. Expected one empty line after import statement. So you will see this file .eslintrc.js file. And one last thing, if you open the Control-Shift-P, I'm going to find the open user settings. I also need to enable the ESLint settings. You must have enabled this line ESLint.autofix on save should be true. And you also need to enable that ESLint.always show status to true. It will show status here. And I also need to use prettier with ESLint. So you need to enable this line prettier.ESLint integration should be true. I want to use ESLint and prettier both in the project. If you try to check this warning error, you will get this warning unexpected console statement because we need to disable the rule or we need to change the rule. I have already created the ESLint rc.js file for you. I have provided you in the project folder. You need to open that and paste them here. Here all the settings here. I like these settings. You don't need to create these settings because I will use prettier and all this stuff. These are the recommended setting for me. You can use any other settings, but if you don't have, you have to copy these settings here. Let's try to run the application. And one last thing, you must have installed these dependencies globally on your machine. First, you need to install ESLint. You can install sudo npm i -g ESLint. And you must have ESLint config Airbnb globally on your machine. And you must have base Airbnb base, otherwise it will give us the warning message. Here you will see the warning messages. And you must have ESLint config prettier, and you must have ESLint plugin import. That's it. You can install ESLint prettier, ESLint, that's it. And finally you must have a prettier. So you need to install these plugin ESLint related plugins. Stop the video and install them globally on your machine. Install these dependencies and final install prettier. That's it. Let's create endpoint to list all the invoices. I'm going to create a get endpoint. The get endpoint is used to get all the resources. So path should be invoices and it will take callback method. I'm going to use request and response. Okay, prettier is giving us the warning. Request is defined but never used. Okay. So I'm going to send the JSON. Let's say here I'm going to create the invoices array. Const invoices. I'm going to send the invoices here. Let's try to test it. I'm going to run the server. We are going to send this simple empty array. If you go to the localhost :3000, I'm going to use Postman to test our APIs. Here you got the message, welcome to Invoice Builder. I would like to get the invoices. Cool, I got the empty array. Let's create some more invoices. The first one is, let's say, ID, and I'm going to provide random ID, the item name, or you can say that item name, payment, or maybe Amazon product. And here you need to specify the QTY quantity. You can also specify the date here, new date. I'm going to copy the same object and paste them here. Cool. So we have created 3 objects inside the array. Let's change the name. You can also change the ID here. Let's change the ID. Google, LinkedIn, to make it more real. Let's try to test the invoices. Boom, I got all the invoices. Let's create a middleware function in Express. You basically create a middleware by using the use method. You can specify the path, or let's say I would like to access the request response in the next method. Each middleware function can access these properties: request, response, and the next. Here you can log the message, console.log, hello, or maybe custom middleware run. Let's try to test it. Custom middleware run, but it is still loading. The problem is that we did not call the next. I'm telling to Express, please go to the next matching route or go to the next middleware. Boom, now you will see the message, welcome to Invoice Builder, and it has successfully logged this message. You can also print date here. Let's say I am going to print the date here by using logging the date. Time %d day.now. Let's try to test it. Boom, it has successfully logged this time. Let's design the structure of our application. First of all, you need to create the API folder inside the source folder, and I'm going to create the controllers. I'm going to use model view controller pattern, and I will place all the controller inside the controllers file. First controller, we will have invoice.controller.js, create the invoice controller, and it will export an object. Here I will place all the actions. It will take 3 arguments: request, response, and the next. Let me return a simple message here, res.json. Message is find all invoices. Cool. Let's create another folder inside the API config. I will place all the configuration related file inside the config directory. First one is routes. Create the routes.js file. We need to import the express from the express package, and let's create the route. I'm going to create the router from the express class, express.router. Now I can define all the routes. First, I'm going to define the invoices routes. Router.get invoices, and we need to provide here action here, invoice controller.find all. Then you need to specify the callback method or action handler, and finally make sure you export this router. Boom, now everything looks good. So go to the app.js. We need to define or mount our router. I am going to import the router from config directory, api.config, and routes.js. It will export the router. Now we need to define our route, app.use/api and router. That's it. So get rid of this stuff. I'm not going to use this logging middleware. Let's try to test it. If you go to the localhost :3000/API invoices, boom, find all invoices works now. You can also implement the same stuff here. I'm going to copy the invoices array, paste them here, and now I can return all the invoices and get rid of this route. Let's try to test it. It will give us the array of invoices. Boom, I got all the array. Let's do a little bit refactoring. I want this config folder outside the API folder. I'm gonna place into the source folder. Cool. Let's try to test it. I'm gonna change the path here. We need to specify the path, config, and routes. Let's try to test it again. It is giving us the error here, could not find the module. Okay, we need to go back to the, let's see, I'm going to use the magic of VS Code. It will automatically import the module for me. No, it's not going to import. We need to import manually. Invoice controller from API folder, controllers, and invoice controller. Now I can specify the find all method. Let's try to test it. Boom, I got all the products. To connect with MongoDB, first we need to install Mongoose package. Mongoose package has installed. Now we need to import the Mongoose package. Let me import it here. Import Mongoose. And we need to specify the configuration for Mongoose. First, we need to specify that I'm going to use promise here. By default, Mongoose use callbacks. I will use async await or promises throughout this course. So that's why we need to tell the Mongoose I will use promises throughout this course. Okay. And here we need to connect to the Mongoose. I'm going to use connect method. We need to specify the connection URI. MongoDB localhost, and we need to write the name of the database, Invoice Builder. That's it. Let's try to test it. Make sure your MongoDB is running. I'm going to start the MongoDB server. Let's do it again. Oops. Let's start the server, Nodejs. Incredible. We have successfully connected with MongoDB. Let's create new model in Mongoose. I'm going to create a new directory, models. And here we need to specify the model. I'm going to create invoice.model.js. First, we need to import Mongoose from Mongoose. And Mongoose provides the schema class. And we need to create a new schema. I'm going to create invoice schema by using the new keyword. Here we will provide all the configuration schema definition file. The first property is item. Let's say type is string. And its required property. Required should be true. And second property is quantity type, and Mongoose provide the number type. And I also have a date property, or maybe invoice date, or you can say that invoice date or due date. Type should be date. And I also have due date. Type should be date. You can also add another property, rate, or type should be number. And I'm also going to define the text. Type should be number. And finally, we need to export the schema class. I'm going to call the mongoose.model. It will return the instance of the model. Name of the model is invoice. Here we are going to provide the mongoose schema. Invoice schema. Oops, it's giving us the warning. Use destructuring here. It is giving us the warning. We don't need to provide the new here. So Mongoose will automatically create a new instance. Everything is working now. Let's create new invoice. So we need to create a new method, which is create method, and it will take request and response. Here I need to add validation for our required parameters. We have item is required. I'm gonna make the qty to required to true. I also need to set date to required. Because these properties are required properties, I also need to set due date to true. These 4 properties are required properties. So first we need to add validation for the required properties. I'm going to use destructuring to get the values from the request.body. The first property is name of the item, qty, date, due, text, and rate. I got all the properties from the request body. Let me add validation. If user does not provide the item, we need to send the bad request error. I'm going to set the status to 400. Bad request error means we need to send the 400 status code. It means user has provided the wrong input param. I'm going to send the error in the JSON format. Item is required field. You did not provide the item. I also need to apply the same validation for other fields like item, date. Oops, we need to have the date. I'm going to change it here. Date is required field. Due is also required field. Rate is not required field. qty is required field. Quantity, so we need to apply validation on qty field. And finally we need to use the invoice model to create new record. Here I will provide all the values, input, item, qty, due date, invoice date or due date, text, and rate. And it will return the promise. So we need to consume this promise by calling the then method. Here I'm going to send the record in the form of JSON. We need to send a newly created invoice in the response. If something goes wrong, we also need to handle the error. I'm going to send the status code 500 and send the error in the form of JSON format. You can also do a little bit refactoring. Let's try to test it. We need to send request to the localhost colon 3000 /API invoices. This time we need to send the post request. We need to provide the body here. Here you need to select the raw and find the JSON option. Here we need to provide the item. I'm gonna, let's say, freelance. I'm gonna create an invoice for freelance project budget. Oops, I got the error. Cannot find post. Okay, because we did not define the route here. So we need to define the route. We need to define the post route. Let's say invoice controller dot create. I'm gonna send the request again. Oops, I got the error. Item is not defined. Cannot read property item. I got this error. Item property is undefined. Let's try to debug the application. I'm going to run the project in debug mode. To debug the application, first we need to execute a couple of scripts. npm run build. It will create the disk directory. Here you will find the disk directory. Now I can start the project in debug mode. I'm going to use Chrome browser to debug the application. Make sure you have Node 8 version. You need to execute the script node -- inspect, and the main file is app.js from the disk directory. If you try to use the source, it will give us the warning message, could not import this stuff because import will not work in ES5. So we need to debug this in this way by providing the disk path. Now application has started successfully. Go to your Chrome browser and find the chrome:/inspect. It is our main file. Inspect this file. Boom. Here you will find all the files. You can find the source folder here, invoice controller. I'm gonna add breakpoint here. I also need to put breakpoint. I actually want to see what is happening under the hood. Why it is giving us the item undefined field. Let's try to test it. I'm gonna send the request. Boom, it has stopped at this breakpoint. Did you see that? Request.body is undefined. The problem is that we cannot read property item of undefined. The problem is that Nodejs is not parsing the request body. So we need to use a JSON parser external middleware. I'm going to resume the script. You will get this error. You can also debug the same application with Visual Studio Code Editor. Make sure you have run the build script. First you need to run the build script. I have already done that. And then you need to click on this debug icon and start the debugging. Make sure here we need to specify the path here. The path is this folder and the main entry file is app.js. And one most important thing, you must need to set the source map to true. Otherwise, you will not be able to debug the application using VS Code. Here I got the error here, unexpected token import. Okay, I'm gonna start the debugging. I also need to put breakpoint here. Oops, did you see that? Server is running at port 3000. Now I can send the request from the postman. Cool. I got this. Let me close that. Here it has stopped at our breakpoint. Now you can see that request.body is undefined. While I am passing this item property, it is giving us the undefined. I'll show you how to fix this problem by adding the JSON body parser. You can debug the Node application using VS Code or Chrome browser. It depends on you. If you are using VS Code, I would recommend you to use VS Code while debugging. And resume the application, you will see the error. Let's talk about error handling middleware in Express. Here I got the error. The problem is that we did not define the error handling middleware. If something goes wrong in Express, Express will look up the error handling middleware. Let's try to create this error handling middleware. Open the app.js. Get rid of this stuff, root route. I'm not going to use that. Let's create the error handling middleware. Error handling middleware, it will take the error object. The first object is error, first argument is error, and request, response, and the next method. It will take callback method. We must need to use the callback method. Here I can manipulate the request object or response object. Let's say here I'm going to set the status response.status. If user provides the status, then you need to use this status. Otherwise, I'm going to provide the 500 status code. And finally, I am going to return the response in the JSON format. And here I am going to tell the error message is error.message. Let's try to test it. Oops, now I got this error, cannot read property item of undefined. So we have configured the error level middleware. If you try to send error in any action controller, then this middleware will catch, this middleware will run. So that how Express behaves that. Let me try to show you the demo. I'm gonna send the error here, error here, cool, and call my error handler middleware. Here I'm going to throw the error. I'm telling to Express, please find my error handler middleware and run this middleware. We have created this error handler middleware. Let's try to test it. I'm going to send the request. Boom, I caught the error here and called my error handler middleware. It has run successfully this error handler middleware. If any user tries to access the invalid route, this route does not exist in our system. Oops, it's giving us this plain HTML. I don't want to send this HTML. I just want to send the plain JSON message not found. So how can you create this global level middleware? You need to open the app.js file. And here I am going to create a new middleware, request, response, and the next method. First, we need to create new error, and let's say not found. Here we need to set the status for the error. I'm going to set the status to 404. And finally, we need to call the next method and error. When you call the next method by passing the error argument, it will run this error handler middleware. So we have set the status 404. It will return this message. Let's say you can also set the message to the error invalid route. Let's try to test it. You will see this message invalid route. We have set the 404 status code. It will set this 404 status code because we have provided the status, and then I have already added the message here, invalid route. You will see this message with 404 status code. I'm going to send the request. Boom, you can see that invalid route, 404 status code. Let me show you another demo. Let's create an error, new error, error while creating invoice. I'm going to set the status to, let's say, 401. I'm just sending the status for testing purpose. You can also add the message to the error.message, my custom error. What Express will do, Express will run our this API middleware because we have used the next method. Let me call the next. I did not use the next here. Let me add the next argument. Yeah, I'm going to provide the error. Now Express will call the API handler middleware. You will see the same stuff here. Let's try to execute this request. Let me send the request to API/invoices. Now you can see that error.status is not a function. Oops, it's not a function. We need to handle in this way. Let's try to test it. Boom. Now you can see the message custom error. We have set the status 401. So this is how error handling works in Express.js. Get rid of this stuff I use for only testing purpose. I also want to use another third-party middleware to log the request status. You need to install this Morgan. Morgan is a third-party NPM package to log the request status. Let's import the Morgan. I'm gonna name it to logger from Morgan package. I'm gonna specify Morgan middleware here. app.use register a middleware which is logger. We must need to provide here format. I'm gonna use def format. Let's try to test it. npm start. Here I'm using this package Morgan HTTP request logger middleware for Node.js. You can also check the more properties. Morgan tiny, Morgan also provide the combined. Let's try to test it first. I'm gonna send the request. Cannot read property item of undefined. Boom. Here it has logged this message. Post API invoices 500 status code. Let's try to do it combined. I want to see what it will log the message. I'll send the request again. Cool. It has combined everything with date, with Postman runtime. I don't want this extra information, so I am going to use this dev configuration. Cool. If you want to configure this Morgan, you can learn more about the Morgan package by checking the docs. So we are still getting the same error. Item is undefined. Okay. We need to register a middleware to parse the body. I'm going to register a middleware here. app.use express.json. Express provides the JSON body parser middleware. They have introduced this JSON method in the Express 4. You can also do in this way by installing third-party body parser middleware. This body parser middleware also provides this JSON method. I'm also going to register another middleware for express.url encoded. I also will use this middleware. It will parse the request params and it will parse the body. Let's try to test it. Let me run the application in debug mode. First, we need to run the build script to execute the debugger. Now I'm able to debug the code. I'm going to start the project in debug mode, open the invoice controller. Application is running now. I'm going to add breakpoint here. Let's try to test it. Boom. Now you can see the body here. Item is freelance project. Because the magic is happening is here. Express is parsing the JSON body here. That's why we have added the JSON body parser. Now it will run this code. It will try to get all the properties. Now you will see this message. Date is required field. Cool. Date is required field. Let's try to create new invoice. So we must need to provide the date here. 4 and 21. I also need to provide the due date 2018 04 21. We also need to provide the QTWay, otherwise you will get the error. Let's say I'm going to create a new invoice for my freelance project budget. Cool. I got the invoice. Here you will see the 200 status code because we have successfully created the invoice. Let me check the invoice from the MongoDB. Start the MongoDB by running this command mongo. And what is the name of the database? Let me check that. config.js Invoice Builder. So we need to tell the MongoDB I would like to use the Invoice Builder database. Okay, let me show all the collections. Boom, here we have invoices. Now I'm going to find all the invoices. So find pretty incredible. Here we have our latest invoice. Freelance project budget. We have added the QTY and here is our date. If I have to validate the complex logic to validate the required params, I don't want to do this. There is a fantastic plugin here, Joy. Joy is a schema based plugin. You define the schema to validate your request params. Let's install the Joy first. npm, let me clear the console, npm i -s joy. Joy plugin has installed. Now you need to import the Joy here. I think I need to import first Joy. Import Joy from Joy. So get rid of these properties. These 4 elements are required. Let's do some to implement the Joy. First you need to create the schema. I'm going to create a new schema here. We need to define the schema. Joy dot object is a method, and here we need to specify all our keys. The first key is item. Joy dot item is string, so you must need to provide the string value for the item, and it is required. Okay, cool. And the second property is date. Joy also provide the date type, and date is also required. And we also have due date. Joy.date. Date is also required property. And finally, we will have a QTY quantity. Joy.number. Joy provides a number type. And yes, it is required properties. So text and rate are optional properties. Joy.number. The type of the text is number and it's optional property. Joy also provide the integer. You can set the integer value for, no, it's not provide number. You can also add integer here, number dot integer. And finally we will have the text property. And Joy dot type of text is number. Yes, it's required property. No, text is not required property, it's an optional property. And finally we will have the rate property. Joy dot type of the rate is number, it's optional property. So we have defined the schema. So how can you validate the schema, get rid of all these stuff? I'm going to use validate method, joy.validate. The first argument is our request body, and the second argument which we defined our schema, and it is going to give us the results. I am going to use destructuring here. Error, it will give us the error. If error comes, it will store the error value in the error object, and we also have the value, which is our value. If error comes, and error dot details, then we need to send the, I'm going to return the bad request error. Bad request is 400, and send the error in the JSON format. If everything is good, we need to create the invoice. So here you can provide the value object. That's it, value. I'm going to run the application in debug mode. Let's run the application, build the script. Cool. Now I'm gonna start the project in debug mode. I'm gonna add breakpoint here. Let's add the breakpoint. Oh, get rid of these stuff. I don't need to use them. Let's start it again. Oops. Run the build the script. Start the project in debug mode. Let me check the console. Cool, application has started successfully. Let me send the request. Cool. It has stopped at this breakpoint. I got the error. Invalid schema content assertion error. Array.assertion error. Invalid schema provided. We need to add the optional here. It's an object. Whoops, we need to do it again. Build. Restart the server. Let's test it again. Oops, it has created this schema. Let's add breakpoint here. Incredible. It has stopped at this breakpoint. Cool. A schema has created successfully. We have defined our schema. Now it is going to validate the request body with our schema, date, due, item, and QTY. Let me step over the code. Here you will get the value object. Here we have value. There is no error. It will not run. It is going to create the invoice and you will see the invoice. Let's provide the invalid arguments. Let's say I don't want to provide the QTY. Let's try to test it. Boom. Now here, error here. You will see the error object and error.details. It is going to return the message QTY is required property. Let me execute that. Boom. 400 status code. Oops. Response.status. We need to set the status. Response.status.json. I'm going to start the server. Now you will see the error. QTY validation error. QTY is required property. You can also create invoice with QTY and text and rate. Let's create QTY. You can also add text. Text his number. You can also provide the rate. 100. Boom. Now you will see the invoice. Let's try to implement the find all. We also need to handle the error. Catch if error. We need to send the set the status 500 and send the error in the JSON format. Cool. We have created the route for find all invoices. That's it. Let's try to test it. This time we need to send the get request. Cool. I got all the invoices. If you don't like to set manually status code, HTTP status code, you can install this package. This package provides all the status code except it is 202, bad gateway 500, bad request is 400. It will automatically replace the status code for us. Here we have 500 bad implementation error. Let's try to implement it. I'm going to install the package first. Stop the server, install the package. HTTP status codes. To use this package, first we need to import that. Import HTTP status code. Let's use the same variable, HTTP status, from HTTP status codes. Cool. Let's replace it here. We need to replace the bad request. Here you can set HTTP status dot bad request. Cool. Let's try to test it. Start the server. I'm gonna try to create the invoice. Let's try to fail it. I did not provide the QTY. Boom. I got the bad request error. Cool. You can also replace here. Oops, we need ESLint is saying absolute import should come before relative import. Okay, we need to import this first. And let's change the HTTP status to internal server error. Internal server error. Cool. I also need to replace it here. HTTP status code to internal server error. Let's try to provide the QTY. Well, everything is good now. Let's try to implement the find by ID. Router.get, we need to find the invoice by ID. I will provide the invoice ID from the Postman. Here you can use the ID, or invoice controller.find one. We did not create this find one method. Let's try to create it first. Find one, request and response. Now first we need to get the invoice ID. You can get the invoice ID from the request params. I'm going to provide the ID here. Cool. Let's try to find the invoice by ID. We need to provide the ID. It will return the promise, so we need to consume the promise. Invoice. If there is no invoice, if user provides the invalid value, we need to send the 404 error res.status. We need to set the status. I'm going to use HTTP status dot not found dot JSON error. Let's say invoice could not find any invoice, or maybe you can say that could not find any invoice. If everything is good, we need to return the JSON with invoice. Amazing. Let's try to test it. I would like to find the invoice by ID. Let's try to copy this ID. We need to send the GET request and we need to provide the ID here. Let me send the request. Invalid route. Aha, we have invoices here. It's not an invoice. Cool, I got the invoice by ID. Let's talk about the delete invoice. It will take request and response. Make sure we have created the route for delete. I'm going to use router.delete to delete the invoice. We use delete method. So I'm going to copy the same stuff here. Make sure you add the catch handler. We did not add the catch. If error comes, we need to send the status. HTTP status code dot internal server error. Internal server error dot JSON error. I need to copy the same line here. And I am going to use find by ID and remove method. It will automatically remove the invoice by ID. Could not delete any invoice. If there is no invoice, we need to send the 404 error. Amazing. Let's try to test it. So we need to use the delete request here. I would like to delete this invoice. Boom, invoice is deleted now. Let's try to find it. Could not find any invoice because we have deleted this invoice. We did not implement the update invoice yet. let's create the route to update the invoice. I'm going to create a new route. This time we need to create the put here. And we need to use the update method. I don't have update method. Let's try to create that. Request response. I'm going to copy some of the stuff from the create method. Let's try to use that. Schema here, because we need schema to validate our object. This time everything is optional. User can update anything. We don't need to add restriction on schema. Let's convert every required property to optional. If something goes wrong, it will handle the value. If something goes wrong, it will handle the validation error. And now we need to update the invoice. I am going to use the find one and update method. The first object is criteria object. We need to add the condition. You can destructure the ID here. ID from request.params. Now ID is available. And the second object is value, the record to update. I also want to see the updated record in the response, and it will return the promise. We need to consume the promise by calling the then method. That will give us the updated invoice. res.json, we need to send the invoice into the response. If something goes wrong, we need to handle the error by calling the res.status. We need to provide the http status code dot internal server error and send the error in the response. Everything is good now. Let's try to update the record. We also need to update the route. So we need to send the put request. Let's try to find all the invoices. Boom. I found all the invoices. I would like to update the item name from freelance project to Nodejs project. Let's try to update that. So I have already copied the ID. Let's provide the body here. And we need to select the JSON. Item name, let's try to update that. Node.js means tag project. I would like to generate the invoice for this project. I would like to get $1,000 from the client. Incredible. Item is updated. Let's try to update the QTY. Let's say I have completed 2 projects for my client. Boom. Quantity is updated. You can also update the date. 2018 0421. You can also update the due date. 2018 0621. I can also add the rate. Let's say 10. I also add text. Incredible. Everything is updated now. In this module, we are going to build this CRUD feature for invoice module. Here user can see or view all the invoices: April payment, May payment, and March payment. User can create new invoice. First, you need to write the name of the invoice. Let's say February payment. And you can choose a date. And you can also choose a due date, and you can specify the quantity, rate, and the text. I also show you how to add the validation. Boom, you will see the error. Item is required property. These are all required fields. I'll show you how to add validations. Boom. I also show you how to add the notification or snack bar. here you will see our new invoice. You can edit the invoice. Let's say I would like to edit the invoice. Boom, you will implement this edit feature. I'm gonna edit this payment February payment handler. Let's say you can also add QTY, you can also update the rate, whatever you want. Boom, invoice updated successfully. You could also delete the invoice. Cool, invoice has deleted successfully. First of all, I would like to display invoice. First of all, I would like to display all the invoices in the table here. So let's get started. We need to create a new service. I am going to create a new service, ng-generate service, and the name of the service. I would like to create the service in invoice folder. Let me check that. We have invoices, and I would like to create service inside the services folder. And here I'm going to provide the name of the service, which is invoice. Let's do some dry run. I don't want spec file. Let's do some dry run. Make sure your backend project is running. Here my backend project is running. Let's do some dry run. Cool. It will create the invoice service inside the services directory. Let's create that. Remove the dry run. So we have service folder here. Let's open that. Invoice service. Boom. Here you will see the invoice service. So to send the backend request, first we need the HTTP client module. I need to import this HTTP client module inside the invoice module. Open the invoice module. Here I'm going to import the HTTP client module. HTTP client module. It will allow us to send the request to fetch all the invoices from the backend server. So first we need HTTP client from HTTP client. Cool. You will see the HTTP client class from Angular common HTTP package. Now here I'm going to define a method get invoices. It will return the observable of invoices array. Cool. Here it is giving us the warning message, cannot find the invoice class. So we need to create the invoice class. I'm going to use Angular CLI to generate the invoice class. ng-generate, hey ng, please generate the invoice class inside the models directory, and the name of the class is invoice. Cool. Let me show you. Here we have invoice class or invoice model. I need to import the invoice class. Boom, it has imported. Let's define the properties for invoice class or invoice model. We have ID. The type of the ID is number. We have item name or the invoice name. The type is string. I also have QTY. Type is number. Date. The type is date. And due date. The type is date. And we also have another property, text. The type of text is number, and we have rate. The type of rate is number. Cool. Now we need to send the backend request. I'm going to use HTTP client. HTTP client. This dot HTTP client. Oops, what is wrong? HTTP client dot get. Here we need to provide the URL for our project. I'm going to create a new constant here. Base URL. Base URL should be HTTP localhost :3000/API. Cool. So we need to use the constant here. I'm going to use backtick here. Base URL We need to replace variable base URL slash invoices. We need to send request to this invoices endpoint, and it is giving us the warning message. What is wrong? I need to use their method. Now the return type is invoices array with observable, so you will get this warning message: type observable object is not assignable. So we need to use some a little bit typecasting. Invoice array, please give me the invoice array in the response. Cool. So we have created the service. Open the invoice listing component. Here I would like to load all the invoices. So first we need to provide this invoice service to the invoice module. Open the invoice module. I'm going to provide my service, otherwise it will give us the warning message or error message: you will not use invoice service. Cool. Now I can use this invoice service here, so we need to inject that invoice service and invoice service. Cool. Here I'm gonna load the invoices. Let's try to send the request. Invoice service.get. It will return the observable. You must need to subscribe the observable. When result come, Angular will call this subscribe method with invoices. It will take the data. Here I'm going to log the invoices. Let's try to log the invoices. I'm gonna log the data here, and the second argument is error. You can also log the error. I'm gonna run the server and use S. Let's try to test it. I'm gonna check the console. Here I got the error: failed to load. No access control allow origin header is present on the requested resource. In the last video, I got this error, so we need to enable the course. Our Node.js server does not allow to send the request. Now no one can send the request to our backend server, so we need to enable the course. You can also specify the server. Let's say only these servers, only these guys can send the request to our backend server. So we need to enable the course. Like, I'm going to enable the course as a public. Anyone can send the request to our backend server. Let's try to enable that. So we need to install the course first. Course package. Open the terminal. I'm going to open the terminal here. We need to install the course package. We also need to save this package. I'm going to use --save. Course package has installed successfully. Let's enable that. Open the app.js file. First we need to import this package, course, from course package. Cool. Now I'm going to use app.use to enable that, because it is a third-party middleware. I'm going to enable it here. App.use course. It will reload the application because my server is running in this terminal. Let's try to test it again. Now I'm going to send the request to fetch all the invoices. Incredible. We have got all the invoices. I'm going to use data table to load all the invoices. You can check the data table from the material documentation. Let me open the data table. Let's use this simple basic data table. View the source. I'm going to copy the same stuff. Copy the same code here. Let's try to open the HTML file from the invoice listing component. I'm going to place all the HTML code here. We must need to define the data source, and each column should be an ng container. We can define the column name. Let's try to put the TypeScript here. We also need a TypeScript. Let's say what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy the same stuff. Listing component. Here I am going to paste that. We don't have element data. Let's say I'm going to copy it and paste it here. I want to show you the demo, how it is working now. I got the error. Material header row is not an element because we did not import the material component. I got this error because we did not import the table component, table module. Let's check out the name of the module, material table module. We need to import that. Open the material module and we need to use material table module. What I'm going to do, I am going to use another, let's say, exported module. I'm going to create another array, exported module, exported material modules. Here I'm going to place all the material related modules which we need to export that. I'm going to place it here. Now I'm going to use dot dot to concatenate exported material modules. So we also need to use the same stuff here. Dot 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 exported material modules. Everything is good to go. Let's try to test it. Boom. Let's check the invoices. Cool. Everything is good now. Incredible. We have successfully loaded the data table. Let's remove the material card. I don't want to use material card here. Get rid of this material card component. Boom. We have successfully loaded the fake data. Here I would like to display all the invoice listing data. First step, we need to refactor the data source. The type of the data source is array of invoices and I am going to set it to empty array. Get rid of these data. I'm not going to use that. Cool. Now we need to define our columns. Here the order should be mattered. Let's say the first column I would like to display the item. Second one is date. And I also want to render the third column, which is due date. Let's say due date and QTY, quantity. And we also have rate and text property. Now we need to update the data source. Data source will be data. Cool, because I got the invoices array from the backend server. Let's try to change the component file. Get rid of this position column. You can read the note. These columns can be defined in any order, but the actual rendered columns are set as a property on the row definition. Like order matters here. The first column, it should be unique name, which is item and item. Let's say it is going to give us the element. I'm going to use this to invoice. You can get the invoice dot item. It's not a name column. Remove that. If we need to use the second property is date. I'm going to place the date here. Let's remove the invoice and we need to get the date. Invoice.date. Amazing. Get rid of this wait. And we need to use due property. We also need due here and we need to rename the element to invoice. Let's rename that invoice.due. Cool. we have another property which is qty quantity and qty. Let's rename the to invoice, and I'm going to use invoice.qty. We also have two other properties, rate and text. Let's create the rate here, rate property, invoice.rate, and finally we have text property, text. I'm gonna rename the qty to text. Cool. Let's try to test it. Incredible. Cool. I got all the invoices. You can learn more about the material table module. What is this material cell definition? You can check the documentation, material header cell, material column definition. What the heck, all these fields? You can read the documentation. I would highly recommend you to check out the documentation, API documentation. And we need to add the date pipe here. Angular provide the date pipe. I'm going to use this pipe here, date. It will automatically refactor the date or reformat the date. Incredible. Now you can see the date in the user format. You can also update the order here. Let's say I would like to change the order of text. I want to see the text before the rate. Let's try to test it. Boom. Here you will see the text first. You can also update any order, but I like this one. So everything is good now. If you will go to the dashboard route, you will see the main content component. I don't need this main content component, so get rid of this main content component from the dashboard routing module. Let's remove the main content component, and I'm gonna add the default path here. Path should be, I'm gonna redirect to invoices module, invoice listing component, invoice listing component. Let's try to test it. Oops, something has broken here. What is wrong? Oops, we need to provide the path here. Dashboard. I'm gonna use invoices path. Let's try to test it. If you go to the localhost 4200, it will automatically redirect to our dashboard invoices routes. If you go to the dashboard, boom, you will see the invoices. Get rid of this main content component. You can delete that. Get rid of this main content component. You also need to remove it from the dashboard module. I don't need main content component. Get rid of this main content component. Remove that. So I don't have any error. Let's try to test it. Cool. Everything is good now, working now. Now we need to add this action menu inside our project. Let's add this button, edit and delete. If you check out the material documentation for the menu and check out this menu documentation, I'm gonna check out the example. We exactly need to build that. What I am going to do, I'm going to copy the same code. We will refactor it. Open the listing component, invoice listing.html file. I'm going to create a new container. I'm going to place my button inside the container. Let's add the menu here inside the container. The name of the column is action. I don't have cell here, so we need to add the button or menu inside the cell. Let's try to test it. We also need to add this action column inside the array here. The last column is action. Oops, I got the error. What is wrong? Material menu is a web component. I did not import this material menu module. Let's import that. Open the material module. Here I would like to import the material menu module. Let's try to use that. We don't have any action item. Cannot read property template of undefined. Oops, I forgot to add the cell. We also need cell here, invoice. I need to place everything inside the cell. Let's try to test it. Boom, here we have action. We have redial. Let's refactor all the title and name. The first one is edit. Material provide the edit icon. And we also need to rename this name is edit. And we have, let's get rid of this button. And we have delete button. And icon is delete. And text should be delete. Let's try to test it. Boom. If we have edit and delete. Oops. I don't want to disable it. Remove that. Cool. It's working now. Let's start implementing this new invoice button. We don't have invoice button here. You can check the documentation of material toolbar. I'm going to use this toolbar. Let's create manually. Open the listing table. First, we must have material. Here I'm going to create a toolbar, material toolbar. Inside the toolbar, I'm going to create a new heading, invoices. Let's try to test it first. Here we have invoices. Let's add the button here. I would like to add a new invoice button. And we need to tell this is a material button. And the name of the button is new invoice. Let's test it. If we have new invoice button, I would like to send this new invoice button to the right side. We need to use a little bit CSS. To apply CSS, I'm going to wrap this button inside the div. Let's add another class which is menu bar. So we need to create this class, open the CSS file for the invoice listing. The position should be absolute. You can also set the right side. I would like to send it to the right side. Here we have color. I'm going to choose background color. Let's try to test it. Boom. Here we have new invoice. But we also need to add some CSS. I forgot to add the CSS for the table class. If you check the table, and I would like to see the source code, and we need to copy this example container stuff like that. I'm gonna paste it here. Let's test it. Cool. We have applied because it has applied the scrolling here. We missed some of the CSS. Let's refactor that. It should be table container. I'm also going to rename that example container to table container. Cool. Everything is working now. Let's start implementing this new invoice form component. If you click on this new invoice, it is going to load this invoice form. So we are going to build this invoice form. First of all, we need to have invoice form component. I'm going to create a new component. I need to create a new component inside the invoices folder. Let me check that. Inside the invoices folder and inside the components directory, and I want to create a new invoice form. I don't want to use spec file. Let's try to do some dry run first. Cool. It will create the invoice form component inside the components directory. Let's create that. Remove the dash dry run. Incredible. A component is created successfully. Let's add the route to the dashboard routing module. I'm going to define a new route /invoices and the new. And this time the component should be invoice form component. But the problem is that we did not export this invoice form component from the invoices module. You will get the error. Let's try to test it first. If you try to go to manually to this route, invoices /new. Oops, I did not run the project. Let's run the project. I did not get any error. Okay, cool. Angular is right because I already imported this invoices module. You can also do here invoices.module for best practices. I would like to use invoice form component outside this module. Cool. So here we have invoice form works. Let's add the navigation here for the new invoice. Open the HTML file listing invoice listing.html. I'm gonna add a new click handler. Let's say save button handler. You can choose any name. So we did not create this save button handler. Let's create this save button handler here. I'm going to create a new save button handler. So we need to navigate to this /dashboard invoices and new route. How can you do it? If you go to the Angular API, you will search the router. Find the router class, and this router class provides the navigate method. I'm going to use this navigate method. You have to provide the commands to navigate to this path. You can also use navigate by URL. If we have navigate, it will accept the commands array. Let's start implementing that. So first we need to use this class router. I'm gonna inject this router class, router from router. Cool. This router has navigate method. It will accept the commands. So we need to provide the commands, dashboard, and then go to the invoices, and we also have new route. Let's try to test it. Will it work or not? Oops, it's not working. Problem is that we need to rename the spelling here. Click. Now I'm gonna test it again. Incredible. We have successfully navigated to this invoice form route. Let's start designing the form. If you check out the material documentation, you will find the form controls and select the form field. I'm going to copy this same code here. Let's add to our project. To implement the form module, we must need to import the material form field module and material form input module. So first of all, import the stuff here, material form field module. Cool. And we also have material input module. Let's start implementing the form. Open the form here, form HTML. I would like to wrap the code inside the material card. We also need an HTML. We also need a CSS, a little bit CSS. I'm going to copy the CSS. And invoice form, I need to open the invoice form CSS and place that. You can choose form container or maybe invoice container. Form container, let's rename that example container to form container. Let's try to test it. Oops, something has broken. What is wrong? So I don't need to use select here. Get rid of the select field. I don't need to use text area field. Let's try to test this. Boom, we have one field input here. Let's try to rename that. I'm going to use placeholder. The first one is item. And the second one is date. We need to use a date picker. Material also provides the date picker module. Let's make it more simple. Placeholder date and type should be date. I'm going to make it simple. Type should be date and placeholder should be due date. And we also have QTY text and the date. Let's rename that. Placeholder should be QTY and the type is number. We also have a number type. Placeholder should be text and the type should be number. Placeholder should be date and the type should be number. You can choose date here, due. Let's try to test this form. Cool. We have item, date, due date, QTY, text and the date. Let's replace this date to material date picker module. If you check out the documentation, you will find the date picker and find the source. I'm going to add the source to our project. Remove the material form field. Let's rename the variable to date. We also need to provide the date here for, and one last thing, this is temporary variable. I'm going to do the same stuff for my due date. I'm going to copy the field, paste it here, replace the date to due, choose a due date, due. We also need to use the due. Cool. It will give us the warning message. You did not import the material date picker module. I hope so. I will get the warning message. Okay, Angular is right. We don't have date picker module. Open the material module. Import the date picker module. Let's try to test it. I'm going to check the form. Boom, I got the same error. Native date picker module is missing now. We also need to add material native date module. I'm going to test it again. Cool. We have the date picker here. Incredible. You can select the date. Boom. It's amazing. Angular provides two types of forms, reactive forms and template driven forms. I'm going to use reactive forms in this course. Reactive forms are better than template driven form. Let's get started. First, we need to import this reactive forms module. Open the invoice module. Here we need to have reactive forms module. Let me do a little bit refactoring. I'm going to add a new module, reactive forms module. Now I can use all the directives and components from this module. Let's create a new form. The name of the form is invoice form. The type should be form group. Now we need to use form builder to create a new group of this form. And I use form builder. Form builder is a class. Let me check the documentation for the form builder. If you try to search the form builder, you will see the API documentation. It's a class. It allows you to group all the controls. This is how you can use the form group. So let's create a new method, create form. It will return a form group. So this dot invoice form is equals to this dot form builder. Now we need to create the group. Each property should be form control. Let's define all the form controls. The first form control is item. I'm going to set it to default value to empty. The second form control is date. I'm going to set to default value is empty. Let's say we will have due date. I also have QTY. I also have rate and text property. Let's learn more about the form group. So the form group is a class. It tracks the value and validity state of a group of form control instances. Cool. You can access all these properties by using this form group. So let's learn more about the form control. In our project, item, QTY, rate, text, these are all form controls. So I can access all the properties, get value, dirty, errors, persistence, stuff like that. In our project, we have item form control, QTY form control. Now you can access all these properties. So we must need to call this create form method. Now I'm going to use this invoice form into the form HTML. Open the form invoice form.html. First we need to create the form. Let's convert this div to form tag. Cool. Now we need to bind our form group. The name of the form group is invoice form. Let's bind all the properties by using the form control name directive. Angular provides this directory. Here we need to provide the name of the form control, which is item. I'm going to do the same stuff for each form element. You can also do here form control name. Let's do a little bit reformatting. And I also want to do it here. Form control name of the form control is date. This time we need to have due date. You can also add here form control QTY and form control name. Let me paste that. Form control name is text. And finally we will have the rate property, rate form control. Let's do testing here. You can access this dot invoice form dot value. We need to use JSON pipe. I'm gonna test it here. Let's try to create the new form. Boom. I'm gonna set the value for the item form control. Let's say I'm gonna create a new invoice, April invoice. Did you see that? It is going to update the item. Let's change the date here. Cool. Here we have date. Let's change the due date. Let's add QTY. You will see the QTY is updated here. You can also add rate and text. Boom, here we have text and the rate call. Let's create new button, save and cancel. We don't have any save invoice button, so I'm gonna create a new button here inside the form. Let's create a new div. Here I am going to create a new button. This time we need to have material raised button, and the type should be submit, and I'm gonna name it to save. You can also change the color. I'm gonna choose accent. We also need another button. Let's say it's a reset button. I don't have any color for cancel. Let's try to test it. Incredible. We have two buttons, save and cancel. Let's try to make it ng submits. I'm gonna use no validate to true, and we have submit handler ng submit form submit, and we need to provide our own submit handler. We did not create this handler yet. Let's start create this. Let's create this on submit handler. I'm gonna open the form component.typescript file. Here I'm going to define my own submit handler. Let me put debugger here. I'm going to log that form value, this dot invoice form dot value. Let's try to test it. New invoice, and we also need to choose the date here. You can also do QTY rate. Incredible, it's working now. It has stopped at this breakpoint. Now you will see this value. I'm going to resume the application. Boom, here we have all the values. Now we need to send the save request to the backend server. So first we need to create a new method inside the invoice service. Create invoice, and it will return the observable, and the type should be invoice. And I'm gonna use HTTP method, HTTP client dot. We need to use the post method, and we also need to use the typecast here. Here we have base URL. Let me provide my base URL. And the endpoint should be invoices. We must need to provide the body here, or request body frames. I'm going to add new argument to the create invoice, and the type should be invoice. Now we need to invoke this create invoice method. Open the form component.ts file. Here I would like to invoke that this dot invoice form. Oops, we need to use the invoice service here. We did not inject that. Inject the invoice service from invoice service. Now I can use that. This dot invoice service dot create invoice. I'm going to provide the form value, this dot invoice form dot value. Now we need to subscribe that. If form is created, I will get the response. I will get the invoice in the response. Let me log that data. Or if something goes wrong, if something went wrong, we need to handle the error. I am going to log the error. Let's try to test it. Let me create a new invoice. Amazon product. We purchase Amazon microphone. I'm going to create invoice for this product. Choose it. Let me choose a due date. Oops, we need to use these. QTY, and you can also add text, rate. Let me check the console. Incredible. I got the response from the server. Here we have MongoDB ID. You can also check the response here. Here we have 200 response. Invoice is created successfully. If invoice created successfully, I am going to reset this form. You can also do in this way, this.invoice form.reset. Let's create that. Amazon G, I need to choose the date here. You can also choose a due date. Let me choose random date. Text, rate. You will see the network request. You can see that we have 200 response. Let me open that. You will see the response here. Status code should be 200 is it okay? It has also reset the form. Let's change the color for this material field. I want to use the accent color. Let's add the color property to each material form field. Now you will see the color here. We have successfully added the color. We also need to add the heading here. Let's add a heading. I'm going to use h3, create invoice. Incredible, we have added this create invoice. You can also do a little bit refactoring, 70% width. Now 70% looks good. You can also change the width of material card. Let me do that. Material card. Let me change the width to 80%. And I want 100% for the form container. Now it looks good so far. Let's try to test in mobile phone. Incredible. Everything is good now. We did not add validation yet. These 4 properties are required properties: item, date, due date, and QTY. And you can see that button is disabled now. Let's start implementing the validation. First, we need to implement the validation in component class. First of all, we need to use an array here. Let's define the validator. Validator starts required. The validators has imported here. Validators. You can also do the same stuff here. Validators dot required. Date is also required. Let's say validators dot required. And we also have another validator for QTY. It is also a required property. Now we need to disable the button. I'm going to add condition here, property binding disabled. Disabled. If form is invalid, then we need to disable the button. Invoice form dot valid. Incredible. Now you can see that form has disabled because we need to fill the required properties. I'm gonna fill that. Let me add the date. Now you can see that it has enabled. If I remove the QTY, it will be disabled. You can also display message to the user, item is required, date is required, or due date is required. Let me show you how can you implement that. Material error, you can use material error component. I'm gonna use directive ngIf. Here we need to add a couple of validations. If item invoice form dot controls, you can access all the controls. Here we need to access the item controls item dot invalid. Then we need to send the error item is required. I'm gonna test it. Now you can see that item is required property. It is giving us the same error. Let's add another validation. If invalid and user has touched this form, touched property control.item.touched. If you will check the documentation for form control, you will find all the properties. Here we have status, parent, valid. We use the valid and invalid property. And we also use this touch property. Now you can see that. You can read more about the form controls by reading the documentation. Let's start implementing the same stuff for each required field. We also have a date required field. So let's say we need to use the date here. Date, replace the date, item to date. And due date, let's replace item to due date. Let's replace that. Oops, we need to change the message here. Date is required. Here due date is required. And I'm gonna do the same stuff for the QTY because QTY is also required field. QTY, and you can say that QTY is required. Let's try to test it. Boom, you will get the error. Incredible. Bam, QTY is required. You will see the validation error. If user has created the invoice successfully, we need to display a little bit notification like user has created the invoice, and we need to navigate to this dashboard/invoices route. If you check out the documentation, you will find the snack bar module. You can use this snack bar module to implement the notification. So to implement the snack bar, we need to import this module, material snack bar module. I'm going to open the material module. Here we need to use material snack bar module. I also need to import that. Now I can use that material snack bar. I'm going to copy the source code. I'm going to copy this source code. So first of all, we need to import this snack bar module. First of all, we need to inject this service private snack bar. And I'm going to use snack bar service. Cool. If user created this invoice, then we need to send the message. I'm going to use snackbar.open. Oops, why are you giving this error? Snackbar does not exist on type invoice form component. Oops, we need to use snack bar, not a simple snack bar. Material snack bar. Get rid of this simple snack bar. So the message should be, you need to provide the message. I'm going to provide the short message, invoice created. And the action should be success. I got the same error. Property snack bar does not exist on the type form component. Angular is giving us the error because we need to use public here. Do not use private. I did the wrong spelling here. Snack bar. It's not a snake bar, so we need to refactor the spelling snack bar. Let's try to test it. I'm going to create a new invoice. Amazon microphone invoice. Let me define the due date. And I also need a QTY. Let's add tax rate. Incredible. Invoice created successfully. I also want to navigate to the invoices route. First of all, we need to use the router class. Router. Now you can use the navigate method. Let's remove this invoice form.reset, or let's keep it simple. This dot router dot navigate. Here we need to provide the commands, dashboard, invoices. Cool. So that is a route. Let's try to test it. New item, new invoice, and we need to see the new date. Latest invoice, let's say QTY, tax rate. Incredible. Invoice is created. Let me double check that invoice. Last invoice, latest invoice. Boom. You can also create the error notification by using this snack bar. I'm going to create a new method. Let's say private. The name of the method, error handler. Error handler, it will accept the error message. And first of all, we need to log the error. I'm going to log the error, say error, and we need to use snack bar to display the notification, the message, and the action should be error. And we need to set the duration 2 milliseconds, 2 seconds. So I'm going to call it here. Remove this simple console, this dot error handler. We need to provide the error, and we need to provide the message, failed to create invoice. Let's try to test this error handling. To test it, first we need to use the invalid route. Let's say we provide the invalid route. Let's say that I'm going to create a new invoice. We need to define the date. QTY. Boom, failed to create invoice. You can see that here we have the error because I'm using the invalid path. Let's start implementing this delete action button. I would like to delete the invoice. So first of all, we need to create a new delete method in the invoice service. Open the invoice service. I'm going to create a delete invoice. It will take the ID, and the ID should be string. And let me return that. It will return the observable. I'm going to use http client.delete method. Let me use typecasting here. And I need to provide the base URL. I'm going to use backtick. Let me use the base URL, and we need to provide the invoices endpoint. We need to delete the invoice by ID, so we must need to provide the ID here. It will return the invoice with observable. So I need to use the observable here. Let's try to test this delete invoice. Open the listing component, invoice listing component.ts file. Let's create the delete button handler. It will take the ID. I'm going to send the ID from the frontend HTML file. Let's try to test it first. ID, it will log the ID. Let me put debugger here. So we must need to use this delete button handler method. Open the HTML file, invoice listing HTML. I'm going to bind the click handler. Here you can use click here, click, and the name of the method delete button handler. We must need to provide the ID, so you can use invoice.id. I can get the invoice here, invoice. Let's try to test it. Let me inspect the element because I would like to test it. Let me click on the delete. Boom. Delete button is working now. I got the ID of the invoice which I need to delete. So let's start deleting this invoice. Open the invoice service and open the invoice listing component. Here I'm going to add the logic for delete. First of all, we need to call the delete method from the invoice service. Here I'm going to provide the ID. It will take the ID and we need to subscribe to the observable, and it will return the deleted invoice in the response. You can also handle the error. I will use error handling technique here later. Let's try to test it. I'm going to delete the invoice. We also need to send a little bit message. Let's debug that. I'm going to log the data. Let's try to delete the invoice. Let's say I would like to delete this invoice. Let me check the console. Boom. Invoice is deleted successfully. I'm going to refresh that. There is no LinkedIn documentation project here, but there is a problem. I don't want to refresh that. Let's add the notification after deleting the invoice. I'm going to copy this error handler. I also need the error handler. So let me create a new method error handler. So we need to use a snack bar. Here we need to inject the service, which is snack bar from the snack bar, material snack bar. Now I can log the message. Let's say this dot snackbar dot open. We need to provide the message invoice deleted. Action should be success, and you can also provide the duration. I'm going to provide 2 2000 milliseconds. If something goes wrong, you can also add a little bit error handling. This dot error handler, you can provide the error, and message should be failed to delete invoice, and I don't have anything else here. Now you can use the message here, display the by using the snack bar. This dot snack bar dot open. We need to provide the message here, invoice deleted, and you can also provide the action, which is success. And I also want to provide the duration is 2000 milliseconds. And if something goes wrong, you can handle the error by using the error handler. First we need to provide the error, and we need to provide the message here, failed to delete invoice. You can use the same error handler here by loading the invoice. So this time you need to say that failed to fetch invoices. Let's try to test this delete button handler. I'm gonna delete this freelance budget. Let's try to delete this latest invoice. Boom, here you will see the message invoice deleted, but it is still not updating the data table. We need to refresh to see the latest results. So that's a problem. I don't want to do that. I don't want to refresh that. Now we need to delete the item from the data table. When I click on the delete, I must be updated this data table. So I'm going to use external library Nodejs. Nodejs provides a remove method. So I'm going to use this remove method. First of all, we need to install the Nodejs. npm install --save Nodejs. Nodejs has installed successfully. We also need a typing. I also need to install the types for the Nodejs. Let's start using this remove method. Open the listing component TypeScript file. Here I need to import the Nodejs. I need to import the remove method. Let me use the Nodejs. I need to use the remove method. Cool. Now I can use that here in delete handler. Remove this dot data source and it will take the callback method. Here, let's say item, and we need to return the removed item. You return item dot id is equals to data dot id. It will give us the removed items. You can also do that, removed items. And finally we need to trigger the data source. Hey data source, I'm telling to Angular material, please update the data source. You can use spread operator here. It will tell the Angular material the data source is updated. Now we need to test that. Run the server. A project is running now. Let's try to test it. I'm gonna try to delete this random invoice. It still did not update the data sources. Let's refresh that. Let's create new invoice. New invoice. I need to add the date. Let's add a due date. I also add quantity, date. Cool. A new invoice is created. Now I'm gonna remove that. Boom, it has updated now. Let's remove that. Cool. A data table is updated now. Let's start implementing this edit handler. When I click on this edit button, all this data must be displayed in the form, invoice form. So first of all, we need to implement the routing. Open the dashboard routing module. Here I'm going to place another route. I need to use the same route here. I'm going to copy that. This time the route should be /id. And I'm going to use the same component, invoice form component. Let's start. Now we need to add the edit handler. Open the invoice listing component. Here I am going to bind a new click handler. Click and edit button handler. I did not create this method yet. Here I will pause the. I'm going to send the invoice ID. Invoice.id. Let's try to create this button. Edit button handler. Go to the listing component, create a new button, edit button handler. It will take the ID. So we need to use a router. This dot router dot navigate. We need to send the commands here, dashboard, invoices, and ID. Cool. Let's try to test it. I'm gonna try to edit this random. Oops, it is not working yet. What is wrong? I'm going to debug the code. Let me put debugger here. Let's try to test it. Inspect the element. I'll try to edit that. Edit handler is working now. Dashboard. Oops, we need to add the S here. Invoices. Let's try to add the S here. I forgot to add the invoices. Let's try to do that. Let's try to edit that. Resume the application. Boom. Cool. It has opened the invoice form. Now we need to load the invoice to the form. I would like to load the invoice to the form. First, I will get the invoice from the backend. Then we need to load the invoice here. So let's start that. First of all, create a new method here. Find invoice by ID, or find invoice, single invoice, or you can choose get invoice. Let's say that get invoice. It will return the observable with invoice type. I'm going to use HTTP client dot get method. Let me typecast here invoice, and we need to use backtick here. Use base URL and invoices. We also need to provide the ID here. It will accept the ID because we want to find the invoice by ID. The type should be string. Go to the form component, and I'm going to create a new method, private method. Let's say that it is also a private method. So I'm going to create a new method, private method, set form to set invoice to form. Okay. I also need to call this one set invoice to form. Now first we need to get the ID. Get the ID of the invoice. Actually, we need to get this ID. I want to get this ID because I would like to find the invoice by ID. So there are many ways to do that. If you check out the documentation and you find the APIs, find the activated route. Activated route. Cool. It's an interface, contains the information about a route associated with component. So I want to get the param ID. This is the params. I'm going to use this method params. It will return the observables. Let's try to use that. This dot. So first we need to inject this interface or class. Private route. I'm going to name it to route. Activated route. Cool. Now you can use the params method. This dot route dot params. I told you it will return the observables. So we need to subscribe to this method. This dot params dot subscribe. It will return the params. Now I can get the ID by using the params. Cool. Let's try to log the ID. Did I get the ID or not? I'm gonna put debugger here. Let's try to do that. I'm gonna inspect the element, check the sources, refresh that. Incredible, we got the ID. Now we need to send the request to the backend server to get the invoice by ID. If user does not provide the ID, I would like to return that. I don't want to do anything here. Stop the execution from this method. If user provides the ID, then we need to find the invoice by using this invoice service dot get invoice. Please give me this invoice, and we need to subscribe to the observable. I got the invoice. So if error comes, we also need to handle the error. You can use the error handler to provide the message. Let's say error, and message should be failed to get invoice. Now I am going to set the invoice to the form. How can I do that? Invoice, we did not have this invoice variable. Let's create that. Invoice, let me use the private method here. Private invoice, and type should be invoice. Cool. Let's put the debugger. Incredible, it has stopped at our debugger breakpoint. I got the ID here. I got the ID. Now you can see that ID, it's not undefined. Actually, I got the invoice by using the ID. The ID should be same. Now you can see that the ID is same. Now here we need to set the invoice to the form. So how can I do that? So Angular provides the, let me use the reactive. Let me use the form group, because the type of invoice form is form group. The type of the invoice form is form group. Let's check out the documentation for this class. I got the patch value method. Patch value, patch the value of the form group. It accepts an object with control names as keys. So we need to use that. Cool. You can also set a single value by using this patch value method. Let me show you how can you implement that. It's very simple. Where is the set invoice form? Okay, I am going to use patch value, this dot invoice form dot patch value. Now I need to provide the invoice object here. It will automatically set the invoice to the form. Let's try to test it. Boom, it has found the invoice. Now it is going to set the invoice. It is going to set the invoice to the form. Boom, incredible. Invoice has set now. Now you can perform the update operation. If you change anything here, you can see that I got the updated invoice record. If you update the date, you can do that. Now our job is to send the update request to the backend server. We are using the same form component to update and create invoice. Let's say I would like to edit this invoice. Okay, it will load the invoice to the form. Now if I click on the save button, it will create the invoice because we are using the create method here. So let me show you the walk through the process behind what is happening now. Let's say I would like to update the name of the next invoice. Okay, now it is going to find the ID. It has found the ID. Now it is going to load the invoice to the form. Okay, invoice has found. Now you can see that we have set the invoice to the invoice variable. This dot invoice is equals to invoice. Now I can add the validation by using this dot invoice variable. Let me show you how can I implement that. If this dot invoice, it means user wants to edit the invoice. Let me add comment below. We need to update the invoice. Otherwise, we need to create that. That is the logic here. So let's start creating the update invoice. We don't have any method here. Update invoice. It will accept the ID and body. The second argument is body, and the type of the body is invoice request body, and we need to get the put method to send the update request, invoice, and I need to use backtick, the same process, base URL, API, the path should be invoices. I would like to update the invoice by ID, and we also need to provide the request body. Let's try to use this method. This dot invoice service dot, we need to use update invoice. I can use this method. It will accept the ID. How can you get the ID? This dot invoice dot ID. Cool. Now we need to subscribe that. Subscribe the observable. It will give us the updated invoice. I can use this method. We also need to provide the body here. Body is this dot invoice. That's it. Why it is giving us the warning message? The argument of type number. Oops, invoice is string here, man. It's not a number. Let's try to. The second argument is the form value, this dot invoice form dot value. That's it. Let's try to test it. Here I'm going to use this dot snackbar dot open. Let me show you the message. Invoice updated, and action should be success. We can also provide the duration 200, 2000. If error comes, we need to handle the error. This dot error handler, we can pass the error, and message should be failed to update invoice. Why it is giving us this message? Argument of type number is not assignable to parameter to type string. We need to fix this problem. If you check the invoice class, we are using the number. The type is string, man. Do not use number. Now everything is good. Now let's try to update the invoice. Let's try to test it. I'm gonna send the request. Something has broken down. What is wrong? I think we need to restart the server. NGS. Now everything is working now. I would like to edit this invoice. Okay. It's got the ID. Now it is going to set the invoice. Boom. Incredible. Let's try to put breakpoint here. Submit form. I'm gonna add breakpoint here. Let's do that here. I could not do the breakpoint here. Let's try to test it. I would like to update the name. Updated invoice. You can also update the date. $120. I can also add the text 120. If I will send the submit request, you will see it will stop at this breakpoint. Now it means user wants to update the invoice. Fail to update the invoice. What is wrong? Message invalid route. $404 not found. API invoices. Oops, I did something wrong here. You can see the log here. Let me check the invoice. Oops, I don't need to add the API. Let's try to update that. Next, new updated invoice. You can also update the name here. Let's update the name 120 120. Did I add the breakpoint here? Cool, I have added the breakpoint. Let's try to test it. Boom, it means it is going to update the invoice. Incredible, invoice updated successfully. Here we have new invoice. Cool, everything is updated. I also want to navigate the user. Let's say this dot router dot navigate. We can provide commands, dashboard, invoices, and that's it. Let's remove each debugger. I'm not going to use that. Let's edit that. Updated invoice. Cool. Let me save that. Cool. It has successfully navigated to this route, dashboard invoices. Let's try to debug this. New invoice method. New invoice. This is new invoice. This is new invoice. I'm gonna choose any date, random date. QTY. I'm gonna put 1 here. 1 Incredible. Now you can see that invoice is undefined. User does not want to update that. User want to create the invoice. Incredible. Now you can see that it is going to send the create request to the backend server. Boom, invoice created.